Let's go. Let's get it. Episode 599 of the Soul Not For Sale podcast. In this clip, it's Joe Rogan, Tulsi Gabbard, and Tulsi's basically just breaking down all the corruption that's going on in the Biden administration. She is just laying it all out there. She's connecting it to Ukraine. And, you know, before this, like I have another episode that I'm about to do as well, where Matt Gaetz is talking with somebody. And he's talking about, you know, the grounds for impeachment. He's trying to get votes for it. He's trying to have Biden impeached. And the argument is like, where's your evidence? You don't have enough evidence that he did anything. And with everything that we're about to hear, you know, my question is, why can't all that be viewed as enough for a case, like building towards a case? It's funny because people like shoo away something like, you know, 10% for the big guy, 50% for pops, all these things that Hunter said. How is that not, obviously that's not the grand piece of evidence that everybody should be like, oh my gosh, but how is it that you can't take all these little things, especially when you hear everything that Tulsi's saying? Because Tulsi's not, she's not Alex Jones. She's not independent journalist. She's someone who works in the government and is watching what's going on very closely and gets information that is fact-based. She knows what she's talking about. How you're going to hear what she says. And my question is, how is all that not at least the small steps towards whatever evidence is needed to impeach this guy? It's very, very interesting to me. And, you know, I guess it is a little bit of a, you know, deep state type of thing where no matter how much comes out about this case, no matter how much evidence we feel that there is, it's just going to fall on deaf ears. It's very odd the way the mainstream media, it's almost as if they dictate what is going to be moved on, which really, in my mind, and I've said this before, and I'm sure you've said it already, I'm sure you felt it, you know, they connect to these alphabet agencies way more than anybody cares to realize. Like, way more. It's almost at times, especially when they're speaking to people in the government, it's like they're almost like a rung above these senators and politicians that they speak to. And we know they're not, based on their positions. When we talk about, say, a CNN anchor and someone who's a senator, obviously the senator outranks the anchor, but I don't know. Sometimes I wonder. I really do. Before I bring you that clip, though, you know I have to bring you to the store. This is IamCoachColin.com, and the first shirt on deck is the one that started it all, Soul Not For Sale. Get yours now. We got those in hoodies for those of you that are going to be experiencing cold weather soon. I hate to bring it up, but we're in mid-September. It's coming. It's coming. For those of you that experience snow, oh, you're going to get hit hard. Make sure you got a hoodie. And we got the Public Enemy #1 shirt. Of course, Google the World Economic Forum. Google its founder. Find out that the founder's mentor is Henry Kissinger. And then you'll understand a little bit more why I have branded this man Public Enemy #1. And for those of you that stayed strong through the pandemic, untainted, unscathed, strong of will, get your certificate of achievement with the certified pure blood shirt. Get yours now. All available at IamCoachColin.com. And if you want 10% off of anything you just saw, hoodie, t-shirt, tank top, mug, doesn't matter. All you have to do is put in the discount code IamCoachColin. That's all capital letters. That's all one word. There's one L in the name Colin, and that gets you 10% off. Now, if you've done that with us already, thank you so much. And let's get into this first clip.
You know,
I think
it makes you wonder.
The thing that is so alarming is that, you know, again, I'm going back to the funding for Ukraine. The fact that there are Democrats and Republicans in Congress who have blocked every attempt of accountability for how that money is being spent, how our money is being spent, says it all. They don't want us to know where that money is going. They don't want us to know how it's being used. They don't want the corruption that continues in Ukraine to be exposed. They don't want us to know the truth. They just want us to continue to support them writing this with this blank check, essentially, without any justification, and tearing people down who just say, hold on a second. How does spending hundreds of billions of dollars of our money help us? How does it help the American people? How does it help our national security interests? It doesn't help us, and it undermines our national security interests, because the consequence of this that we are directly facing because of the Biden administration and the warmongers in Washington is we are now closer to the brink of nuclear war than ever before.
Yeah.
How has that made us safer? It hasn't.
And 10% for the big guy.
The fact that no Democrat in Washington that I've heard, at least, and I've been watching pretty closely, has stood up and said, well, hold on a second. All of this evidence that's coming out, more and more evidence that's coming out about the corruption of Hunter Biden and President Biden's culpability in that entire mess. No one is saying, hey, we should probably look into this. They're dismissing it all and saying, the only thing Joe Biden talked about with Hunter Biden's, Ukrainian Burisma executive counterparts, they talked about the weather.
Yeah.
I heard a congressman say this, to the media, what are you guys even worried about? All he talked about was the weather.
Yeah. They flew over to Ukraine.
Right.
He flew over to Ukraine in 2015 with his son to talk about the weather.
And then when they came and visited Hunter in D.C., and Hunter called his dad, and they talked about the weather.
And isn't there somewhere in the neighborhood of $20 million that they got from that? From these dealings?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's what I've heard has been accounted for.
Yeah.
But then, you hear all kinds of things like, how is it that, Joe Biden's grandchildren have $5 million in their trust account? Where does that, I don't know. But the fact that they're not even, that there's not just an accepted standard in Washington saying, well, these accusations are being made. There is evidence in communications, written evidence that couldn't have been fabricated. We, as elected representatives of the people, have a responsibility to objectively investigate this and see where it leads.
And same in Hawaii, right?
Same everywhere.
With Bisson and Green and all these guys, that's the same thing. I mean, you think about, there was millions when they were talking with Hunter Biden, and that was before he was a president. Now he's up in the billions. He's up in, I would have to think, all this money going to Ukraine, it's much easier to make that money disappear than it is to make it disappear in Hawaii. And they have, what's that saying? Just at the best, the government's a money laundering machine, and at the worst, the devil himself sometimes,
A friend of mine was telling me that her friend is an art dealer, and he told her that art is I think she said one of the most used platforms or vehicles for money laundering. And when this was said within the context of how is it that Hunter Biden can sell a piece of art for $500,000,
right? Boom.
$1 million.
Boom.
So this is what I mean when you look at so how much money are they actually accounting for that's going directly into his bank account or whatever? I think you got to look at the whole picture.
Yeah, and you also have to say who's buying it.
Yeah.
Who are the people buying it?
Exactly.
What are their connections?
Right.
Is it an LLC that's purchasing this from some sort of a offshore account? What's going on?
Right.
Where's that money coming from?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And the fact that the mainstream media, those two whistleblowers from the IRS investigative agents who came out and said basically they were stopped from doing their job and looking into Hunter Biden by their superiors. The fact that the mainstream media called them so-called whistleblowers, immediately undermining what they were actually doing, putting their entire career and reputation and safety on the line, was again straight out the gate. If you're not falling in line with what the power elite, Democrat elite, wants you to do, and their partners in the media, you are immediately discredited.
And when people, what is this here, Jeremy? Another unknown single buyer purchased 11 Hunter Biden paintings for $875,000. That buyer has reportedly purchased the majority of a $1.38 million total in sales.
He likes art.
Yeah.
Got a big fan.
He's a big fan. The gallery sets the pricing and handles all sales based on the highest ethical standards of the industry. Well, the industry doesn't have high ethical standards. So it's like if you're the ethical standards of the industry of pimping, you know, you know, you have to have high ethical
That's
standards.
what I said, and does not disclose the name of the buyer to Hunter Biden.
But just what they did with the laptop story.
Yeah.
The fact that they suppressed it from Facebook, they suppressed it from Twitter, they did all that. And when Zuckerberg was on the podcast and he said the FBI had contacted them about that was a sobering moment. I was like, wait, what?
Yeah.
And then when the Twitter files come out and then you read that, you know, and the 51 former intelligence agency guys that had signed off on that, that this was Russian disinformation when they had known it wasn't.
That right there, when you talk about interference with our elections, when you look at some of the stuff the media is talking about, and you see what happened there weeks before that 2020 election, I think that the whole that letter came out from the 51 former senior intelligence officials in October, just prior to the November election in 2020, stating this laptop has has all the hallmark of Russian disinformation based on nothing. And then you go back and you look at, well, why was that letter instigated? Well, then campaign senior advisor Tony Blinken to Vice President Biden made a call. He made a call to Mike Morrell within the CIA, or former deputy of the CIA. And then he called a friend, and there was a CIA staffer, an active CIA staffer, who helped orchestrate that letter within like a 24-hour period of time. And this is all on the record. This is all. Mike Morrell said this to Congress in private testimony that's since been released. But this was instigated because the Biden campaign told him, "Hey, we need Joe Biden to have a good talking point to use in this next debate against Trump, because we know Trump is going to bring up Hunter Biden's laptop, and we need to give Biden a talking point so that he can immediately dismiss the whole topic of the Hunter Biden laptop." That letter from the 51 senior former intelligence leaders gave him that talking point. He used it in that debate, and it's what was used as the excuse to shut down the New York Post and to shut down anyone who tried to publish the contents of that laptop.
It's wild.
For national security reasons.
It's wild, and there's no repercussions.
There's no repercussions, but you want to talk about interference in our election. You withheld information from voters that may have, some would say very likely would have, persuaded them to not vote for Joe Biden.
And the people on the Democratic side, they are so against Trump that they would happily take that.
Yes.
And that they don't care.
No qualms.
It doesn't bother them.
Nope.
They're like, look, it did what we wanted it to do. Joe Biden got into office.
Right.
Better than Trump.
It's about them. It's about their power. And that's it.
And the true believers are like, yes, better than Trump, better than Trump, better than Trump. Whew. Trump's a Russian agent. They'll say all this crazy stuff that they just also heard spit out by the propaganda
machine. And the facts
machine.
don't matter at that point.
Are we living in a...
You see what I mean? Like, by everything they just said, is that not grounds for some kind of case where everybody has to look into this, whether you're left or right? Or I guess, the ending of what they said is what's really doing it. The fact that the Democrats and even the public who are left leaning, they don't care as long as they're getting what they want, But I've said, and Joe said, and I'm sure many people have said, that you don't realize that as you're just allowing the thing that you want to have happen, when it's on the other side, it'll happen again. And you'll be on that side of, well, this is not unfair. Why isn't anybody looking into this and that? It's I don't know. It's just so weird to me. So weird. With everything that Tulsi just said, there's no grounds for some governing body to just be like, we have to look into this in depth. And I get it. You're a Republican and you really want this to happen. And I get it. You're a Democrat and you think this is all nonsense. But we are looking into this. We have to. With the call, the CIA, 10% for the big guy, 50% for Pops. All we did was talk about the weather. It's so crazy to me. And then the art, the fact that this art is being bought by unknown people and the art's terrible and it's obvious. Well, I can't say for sure, but it's one of the most counterfeited. It's one of the most, like Tulsi said, used for money laundering. And it kind of seems like it. Like, who's buying all that art? Who's buying 11 pieces of Hunter Biden art? Why? For what purpose? It doesn't make any sense. None of it makes any sense. It's really interesting. And, I always go back, although it doesn't completely touch on the situation. It touches on a little bit of what's happening with Trump, but I guess it also touches on why Biden is almost like has a force field around him towards this stuff, is when Chuck Schumer said about Trump how the intelligence agencies, not just one, multiple, are very upset with Trump. And they got 6 ways from Sunday to get at you. And if they have 6 ways from Sundays to get at you, then they probably have a lot of ways to keep you safe as well. That's the only thing I can think of, because none of this makes any sense. Yeah, it's interesting. Like, how is there not like some kind of like we the people body where if a bunch of people, like these people who are just like, they're just people, they're just the American people, and they just go, well, we've heard this, and this. We've heard this, and this all about this president, and we want to look into it. Give us all available information to look into this. But then you'd be asking for information from the CIA and the FBI, and they're not going to give it up. They're just not going to. There should be some laws in place where they have to. It seems like these agencies are the only ones that can kind of, they have the ability to kind of push the Constitution aside. But it's in this way where, they're not pushing it aside. They're kind of just tiptoeing around it, They're like playing hopscotch. They're just jumping over the letters here and there, and, it's so odd. But listen to Tulsi. She called out everything. I've made videos about her talking about the WEF connection, and, I still stand by that. Like I said at the end of that video, if you saw it, I said you live and you learn. You get introduced to an organization, you think it's a good thing, and then all of a sudden you realize, oh, this institution, this organization, this WEF, they don't stand for what I stand for. They're actually very against it, and I can't be a part of this. I think that's what happened to her, and thank God it did, because she's so well equipped verbally, intellectually, in terms of who she is just as a person, serving, everything she's done for the country, that if she was on the other side of things, oh my gosh, she'd be like a likable Hillary Clinton. She'd be like a likable, actually in her position because of her merit and intelligence, Hillary Clinton. That would be a very dangerous thing. That would be super dangerous. So thank God she saw that whole thing and said, I don't want to be a part of this. I don't want to be a puppet. Whew, because she could have done some damage. But again, all this is going on deaf ears. Let me know what you think about it, about all of this, because I know there are people out there. I rarely run into them, but there are people out there that feel like nothing that's come out is substantial evidence. And then, and these people are, their brains work, but they just don't feel, they feel like getting into whatever evidence is available is conspiratorial. And then there's the people on the other side where they think, they still think it's Russian disinformation because they heard it on MSNBC like a year ago. It's so weird. The FBI had that laptop since 2019. You know that? I'm going to talk about it in another video I'm about to make, but since 2019. It's just so interesting to see what's going on. And all of this protection. Like imagine you're like way back in the day and this amount of protection is happening to like Kennedy. You'd be like, okay, I get it. They want to keep a good man in office. I understand. It's a little unconstitutional, but I see what you're doing. You want to keep a good guy in there. I understand. But then you look at it and it's Joe Biden. And you're like, this is what you're fighting for? But you know what? I guess that does make sense. You do want to fight for that kind of guy, because that kind of guy, in a video I just made where the mainstream media is just calling Joe Biden out, one person calls him a wind-up doll. Like a person who's just, like Tulsi said she wouldn't be, a person who's a puppet is so valuable, I guess. If you're just willing to say the things and do what you're told. I guess it's like extremely valuable. I don't know, man. It's wild to see, though. Wild to see. But hopefully something comes of it. You know, I'm going to do some pieces in the coming week about a gentleman named Senator Hockley, Josh Hockley. If you haven't seen anything from him, he's a great senator. I would love to see him as president. I really would. I know there's probably some things that I don't know about him, and you're like, hey, and you know, last year he said this and did that. But for the stance that he's taking against the administration right now and the things that he's pushing for and how he calls out things being so unconstitutional is just great to see. Great to see. Anyways, guys, let me know in the comments what you think about this whole thing. What do you think about what Tulsi just said? Is she just doing her best impression of Alex Jones, or is she coming with straight up facts? You let me know in the comment section. If you haven't liked the video already, like the video. If you haven't subscribed already, subscribe, hit the notification bell, because we're making 1 to 3 videos a day and it's hard to keep up, believe me. I'm out.